As she mentioned, my name is Lisa Gray. I am a nurse by background. I'm with the EIC, the hospital and trauma domains. But my nursing background is pediatric critical care and pediatric trauma. So today, many of you are familiar with the hospital-based ED Toolkit. So I'm going to take a little deeper dive in that. Most importantly, get some feedback from you all to make this the most user-friendly, applicable toolkit for the hard work that you are doing. So again, just a little background, as Dr. Runkle mentioned, all of this work is based off of the policy statement related to pediatric readiness in the emergency department. Our toolkit very much outlines the 7 domains of pediatric readiness that are referenced in this policy statement, as well as and the checklist that you will see as well. So very similar, you will see a lot of similarities in some of the format between the pre-hospital and hospital-based checklists. Specifically, the document that you're seeing on your screen is the PDF or the hard copy, if you will, of the checklist, and it matches the domains of the toolkit that we have online as well. As I mentioned, there are the 7 domains that the toolkit is based off. You will see, I believe it's 2 or 3 additional resources listed in the hospital-based toolkit, and those include disaster preparedness, clinical evidence-based guidelines, and also an interfacility transfer section as well. So all based off of the 7 domains of pediatric readiness that are a common theme throughout all of the work that we do. Just like the pre-hospital toolkit, you can take a tour, an interactive tour while I walk through this by scanning the QR code on your screen. Also, Rachel has been kind enough to include the link in the chat box if you would like to navigate as well through the online site. All right, so we'll go ahead and start. I'm going to switch over to the web-based screen. So just like I mentioned, this is the PDF checklist that is accessible on our website. So as I walk through, you'll see that all of the sections very much coordinate with the checklist that you're seeing on the screen. So I decided to go ahead and start at the beginning of the landing page of the EIC website and walk you through that way, just in case you have a hard time seeing where the toolkit is located. So if you'll go under focus areas, then to the National Pediatric Readiness Project, and right here on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see Readiness Toolkit. So we'll take a look there. Really, this toolkit is a really comprehensive, dynamic set of resources that was compiled by many subject matter experts, as well as members, renowned members of our collaborating partners, AAP, ENA, NSIMSO, ACEP, American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma. So a vast amount of experience in folks who are taking care of all aspects of the pediatric care continuum. So these recommendations really apply, the recommendations and the resources from the toolkit really apply to any emergency department, whether you're working in a small, rural, critical access hospital, possibly is your emergency department setting, anywhere to bigger centers, big academic university level centers or emergency departments. These resources are really for everyone. So before I begin kind of going through the toolkit content itself, if you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, you will see that there is you can download the checklist here. And then we have also an additional, it's called an interactive checklist. And I'll explain that a little bit more towards the end of my presentation as we walk through, because it looks a little bit different than the traditional checklist and is not as comprehensive, but is a resource that many folks like to have. So scrolling back up to the top, just a few differences that you've seen from the pre-hospital toolkit. We're not set up by persona yet. So your specific area of expertise isn't noted yet. So this is really, you can't click through according to nurse, pre-hospital, so on and so forth. This is a general setup. The hospital toolkit did precede the pre-hospital toolkit by many years. And we are, as time has moved forward and lots of folks are putting a lot of time and effort into making our website more user-friendly, you will probably see changes coming in the future that make the setup look very similar to our pre-hospital checklist. Our search function isn't quite as up to date as the pre-hospital toolkit, but you can still type in areas or type in keywords in the search box and go to specific resources that you are looking for. Just not as detailed as, like I said, the pre-hospital one. Again, for this particular toolkit, we do have a bar for you to provide feedback. I know, so I'm fairly new to the EIC. I've been here a little over a year, and many of you have already done just that, provided feedback to myself and many of my colleagues within the EIC to make some changes, brought to attention some links that aren't working, and we really, really do appreciate that feedback. I encourage you to continue to do so. And as we work on improvements, it's always nice to hear from you all, the folks that use the toolkit, to make sure that we have everything set up and is easily accessible for you. You'll see that many of the resources in the hospital ED toolkit are more generic and frequently have currently been vetted by those subject matter experts and organizations that I mentioned previously, and they aren't as institution specific. They're, in fact, most of them, the majority of them are not institution specific. Our really intent is to provide resources that are user friendly for everyone and have more of first of all, we want to ensure that they're evidence based. But we also want to make sure that they're a generic resource for anybody to use and aren't necessarily institution specific. You will see a few examples that are so, and that's good. Many folks want that very detailed, specific example of an institution, but for the most part, you'll see that everything's pretty generic. So at this point, we'll go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into each of the sections. So really, again, order is set up just by the order of the checklist and order of the areas or the domains of pediatric expert or pediatric readiness. And this first section really does focus on the PEC. So what do we know about the PEC? They're instrumental in preparing emergency departments to be hospital ready. This particular section gives multiple resources on, number one, how important it is to have that PEC role. As I'll click on some of these links, many of them open into Word documents or PDFs, or perhaps even sometimes videos, but specific documents that really highlight the importance of that PEC role. So I won't go through all of these, but just as an example for you to see what those look like as you click on them. So the importance of the roles and responsibilities of a physician PEC, as well as roles and responsibilities of a nursing PEC. Each of these sections also has specific examples of credentialing and guides you to websites for example, I'll use nursing specific, for certifications for your certified emergency nursing certification, your certified pediatric nursing certification, so on and so forth. Again, some general resources and webinars. A nice webinar here we have from some of our experts, a couple of our experts in pediatric readiness. So always having those available. And then a sample elevator pitch for pediatric champions. This is really a resource for you to share with your colleagues, share with your leaders of your organization why PECs are so important. I'm not sure if I mentioned at the beginning of my talk this, and I know that Dr. Runkle did. This toolkit really was incepted, I guess, if you will, back in 2013, 2014, and then revisions were most recently done in 2019, 2020. So the majority of all the materials that you see have been recently reviewed and revised by our subject matter experts and NPRP steering committee. So I forgot to mention that. I wanted to go back and make sure I covered that. So this is really this section, again, administrative function, the importance of the role of a PEC. Each section, as you will see, also expands and closes, looks a little different from the pre-hospital toolkit, but pretty user-friendly and straightforward. This particular section is more about competencies and not necessarily competencies, excuse me, resources for competency checklists. What should be included in staff competencies for each discipline? You'll see some of these as I click here. Again, going back to a specific document. So you have the luxury of being able to print those off if you will. And this is one of those resources that is institutional specific, but a nice resource for anybody to use and replicate. We know we're very fortunate in the pediatric world that many of our colleagues, most of our colleagues are so very willing to share tools and guidelines, policies, checklists, anything that have been previously developed. We know that many are always willing to share. A handoff tool, also a very important piece of utilization to have during pediatric care. So that particular link directs us to IHI and a nice resource on a SBAR tool. We'll close that section. Moving on to quality improvement and PI in the emergency department, you'll see that this section is a plethora of resources related to the QI process and integrating a QI plan in your emergency department. So again, very specific resources around rapid cycle improvement, rapid quality improvement science, so on and so forth. I won't click on each of these details. Again, a webinar in this section. But again, just wanting to make sure that you know that these particular resources are here and you have the ability to access them in a very easy manner. Once again, I'd like to reiterate here, if there are resources, particularly in this section, that would be of benefit for you, especially around QI. We know that developing quality improvement plans and process improvement plans in pediatrics is sometimes challenging. Again, one of the many, a big focus on many of our collaboratives within the EIIC. So please take an opportunity to look through this section and provide us feedback and what additional resources may be helpful for you. Moving on to policies, procedures, and protocols. This is a large section, but again, goes through many of the areas of pediatric care and gives examples of each of these areas to help folks implement policies, procedures, guidelines. Many of them redirect you to a different area, but again, many resources available to open, share, utilize for the development of protocols, procedures, so on and so forth. So you can see as I click on those, each of those sections expands. So assessment, documentation of vital signs, immunizations, sedation and analgesia, many resources on consent, social and behavioral health, Physical and chemical restraints, especially useful during times of pandemic, as we see uptakes in these vulnerable patients presenting to our emergency department. Child abuse and maltreatment, death of the child in the emergency department, do not resuscitate orders, family-centered care resources, communication with primary care providers, medical imaging. We do have a section coming soon on children and youth with special health care needs, telehealth, and telecommunication. I don't want to click on each of these, being mindful of time and plenty of time for question and answer at the end, but I wanted to just walk through them briefly so that you know that they are here. Most of them, as you can see here, are PDF documents or Word documents on this particular resource. All right. So we headed through those. You can see if you click on each of them or click on one particular page, it will take you through the plethora of resources there. Disaster preparedness. Again, being mindful of time, I won't click through each of them, but lots of resources from our folks in the disaster domain of the EIC. So easy and at your fingertips. Clinical-based evidence guidelines. Some PCARN publications. Many of us use the PCARN rule in our emergency departments, so those are right here at your fingertips. Interfacility transfers. I want to go ahead and make a mention here. Our interfacility transfer toolkit is noted in this section and is currently under revision. You can still access the interfacility transfer toolkit here, but it is under revision, so you will see updates coming soon to that. Patient safety, again, the Braslow system, resuscitation, calculations, code cards, key points on medication errors, lots of nice resources around patient safety in this section. And then last but not least, supplies and equipment. This particular section takes you right back to the checklist, which if I scroll down here, you'll see is very detailed on specific lists of medications, sizes of equipment, very, very, very detailed description of all the supplies, equipment, and medications that you will need to appropriately care for pediatric patients in your emergency department. So I think that's it as far as a quick walkthrough. I'll go back to my PowerPoint really quickly and mention the interactive checklist. I know that many of you do like to use this interactive checklist. And I just want to note the caveat here that this interactive checklist looks exactly like the full comprehensive checklist, except it's only those areas that have an interactive link included in them. So I'll go ahead and open it here. You can see it's only the areas of the pediatric readiness checklist that have links. So it is not a comprehensive list. I want to make sure that everybody, just in case you think, oh, here's the interactive checklist, it's the comprehensive ED checklist. It is not. It's only those resources that have an interactive link. Some of them, in fact, link you back to the toolkit on the EIC website. Some of them have organization specific, but I know many of you use that, so I did want to take the opportunity to address that really quick. All right, and last but not least, as I mentioned, we certainly want your feedback. So I have included a QR code that links you back directly to our hospital-based care improvement, or our hospital care domain, which is the email address that we monitor for suggestions from the toolkit. So please take a moment to keep that feedback coming. As you work through, if you find any links that aren't working, if you have suggestions and think of specific tools or resources that would be helpful for you taking care of your patients in the emergency department, please get that back to us. We are very, very willing to put that through our vetting process and make sure it's good for all and applicable to all folks, but we welcome that feedback. And at this time, I will stop talking and thank you again for everything that you all do every single day for our pediatric patients.